On today's episode, we are tackling overwhelming stress, anxiety, panic attacks, and resilience with a social psychologist who has a deep expertise in mind-body medicine. If you have been dealing with anxiety, burnout, or major life transitions, this episode is packed with plenty of insight and practical strategies to help you respond, not react, but respond to life's toughest moments. So get ready for some grounded, research-backed tools to help calm your nervous system and meet your emotions with compassion and start showing up for your life in a whole new way. This episode could just be the one that eases your daily life. Stay with me. Welcome to Shift or Get Off the Pot, the podcast that helps you get out of your head and into action so you can make your dreams your reality. Let's get to it. Welcome to today's episode. Joining me is a repeat guest whom I have asked back on the show because she is a powerhouse in helping people handle life's many challenges. She holds a PhD in social psychology and certifications in mind-body medicine and mindfulness-based stress reduction. I guess you could say that she blends science with soul, and she helps people grow through grief, trauma, burnout, life's major transitions. And she is here today with evidence-based practical tools to help us navigate life's stressors with perhaps more curiosity and ease. So welcome back to the show, Dr. Theresa Skaar.
Thank you so much. What a great intro. I'm like, I sound so cool.
You are cool.
Well, thank you very much. It's lovely to be back again with you. Thank you so much for having me.
I mean, I'm really glad to have you here because I've had quite a few people on the show that have talked about different experiences that have led to anxiety and panic attacks and PTSD. So I want to get into some of that. But first, I would love to understand a little bit about your background and what led you into social psychology and then getting certified in mind-body medicine and mindfulness.
Yeah, thanks. They are very interlinked. So I worked in corporate for 20 some odd years. I worked at an insurance company. I was a claims adjuster. I worked in an engineering firm, wore a lot of different hats there. Left to pursue a different company. It was more of a kind of a headhunting agency. And I was like, oh, I just need a change. And then I got laid off. And so during the economic downturn, 2009, and my husband said, well, why don't you finish your degree? Because I had never finished my undergrad. And I had always had this, because I'd take classes here and there and then life would intervene. And so I had always had this thought like, oh, I'd love to be a full-time college student. And people were like, you're an adult. That's not going to happen. And then I was laid off and I was an adult and a full-time college student getting my undergraduate degree. And I graduated when I was 41. And then I went back actually to the same engineering firm that I had been at for so long. And my advisor and now friend kept saying, what about grad school? What about grad school? And I was like, come on, like I just got my undergraduate degree and life intervened again and different changes were happening. And so my husband and I had a pretty serious talk and he said, well, think about your bookshelf. Do you want to get paid for what you do for free or already? So I'm already researching and reading and, being interested in these topics about supporting people and myself and those around me. And he said, well, we could take, 5 years out and you could, pursue this, advanced degree and then maybe get work with purpose instead of just kind of slogging away at a 9 to 5 in a corporate office. And so we made the leap. And I was lucky enough to be accepted into a program at UNR to their social psychology, interdisciplinary social psychology PhD. And I wanted to go there because UNR has the Sanford Center for Aging. And I knew that I had hoped that I'd be able to work with them. And I did. So while I was getting my degree and then post-degree, I worked at the Sanford Center. All of that to say that led into mindfulness in a big way, because that first year, so I was 44. And so my whole cohort, everyone in that was starting that journey, all legitimately could have been our children, like age-wise. And I was stressed. Like, I was crazy stressed. And, alcohol consumption went up. I started smoking cigarettes again. I had quit
Oh my
like
gosh.
years ago, but like everything in me, when we talk about stress, my body was like, oh, when we are stressed, we do these things. And that was my habit loop. And that was my like, oh, how can I get out of this stress thing? And so, that first year was real. Oh, and I started eating Sour Patch Kids kind of like obsessively. And I had never eaten those before. Anyway, so it's like the body, it's like sugar, little, and then a year into it, I was talking to a friend and she said, oh, of course, I was like, oh, I'm so stressed. And she was like, have you thought about meditation? And I was like, I will literally try anything. Like at that point, right? Because I'm like, none of these things are working. And so, which leads beautifully into the topic that we're talking about today, because I took my first 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction course, and it did not take away the stress in my life, Kim, but it did help me meet it differently. It helped me get a little closer to it. It helped me be more skillful with what was on my plate, instead of that feeling of overwhelm or numbing or reaching for things that weren't actually supportive. And so that journey, so while I was getting my PhD, my, mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher, she was like, well, you should get trained. And so I was like, well, okay. And so that's a very intensive process while I was getting my PhD, about a 3-year, I think it was 3 or so years process to get
certified in that.
So I'm qualified in that. So I did not go certification for that. But then, towards the end of my PhD program, I was, that's when I became certified in mind-body medicine. Also another about 3-year process for that, 2.5, 3-year process. So, but it just, that's how much of a difference it made in my life. And now I weave it through everything that I do.
First of all, great advice that your husband gave you. Yeah. Take a look at your bookshelf, and would you like to get paid for what you're already interested in and doing? Right. Fantastic advice. Yeah.
He's amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's quite a switch from what you were doing. Corporate engineering hat, that kind of thing. I mean, that is very logical. And then you're thinking, okay, now I'm talking about mindfulness and meditation. And I know that you also, really studied as a social psychologist, aging and that process and all of that, and trauma. So, you are blending, again, when I said in the beginning, it is like blending science with the soul and bringing them together, which really is the whole body experience. But I love that you also brought up the fact that you had a habit loop, because I think that's what so many of us do, right? It's our body knows how we have been accustomed to dealing with stress. And so we go back to that.
Yes.
Or like you said, oh, I tried new things, Sour Patch Kids. Who knew?
Wild. And really, really wild. Yes. And that, I think that is such a key place for people to start even thinking about what's happening in their lives, because, without awareness, we can't make shifts or changes. And so there's that process too of becoming aware and going like, okay, these things aren't working. And so someone gives you an idea of something else, and then you're like, okay, like let's try it. And not that you have to be so at your wit's end, but it is hard, especially, I didn't grow up with that. I grew up in the Midwest, and again, working in corporate America, working in cubicles or offices and marketing and HR and all of the things that I did not, they all had people involved, but not in the way that I get to do now. Yeah.
Yeah. It is interesting that, most of us, I think, unless you take the time to be self-aware, you just get caught up in the busyness of life. And also, with social media now
Yeah.
and taking over so much of our lives, I guess, maybe not taking over is the right word, but it's very easy to get lost in that and start consuming it and go down that rabbit hole. Like, okay, I'm on the internet searching for something, or, you look at one thing on YouTube and you're like, boo, all the way down. Right. But it's numbing out. It
Yeah,
really is
it really
numbing
is.
out, because I think maybe we're in burnout and we don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or we don't even cognitively know that we're in burnout. We just know that, I am so flat, or I've given so much that, just this scrolling is such an easy way to while away the time. And it is numbing out because we are not, unless we're consciously choosing, right? So it's like, oh, I'm going to look at it for this amount of time. But I don't know how many times I've picked up my phone to look at the weather. 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, I don't know what the weather is. but dang, if I haven't seen some cute cat videos and puppies and whatever else is there. And Judson Brewer, I don't know if you know his work. He has a book called The Craving Mind or
Mhm.
Craving Brain. I'll get you the title, but he also has a TED Talk. He calls these phones weapons of mass distraction. And so I think they are so easy to just immerse yourself and get away from your worries for a little bit, and maybe laugh at some cute videos and things like that. It takes you out of your life in a way that you can't then make conscious choices on how to meet your life.
That's a good point. Make conscious choices on how to meet your life, because I agree with you. I think it's very easy to just numb out with that.
Yeah.
And then you don't recognize that, oh my gosh, maybe I'm just hitting a wall. Maybe I'm just burned
Mhm.
out and I'm just using this to numb out because I don't know another way. Or things are so overwhelming because you have so much going on.
Yeah.
Instead of learning how to cope with those things, it's easier to just say, I don't want to feel it. But going back to your point of a habit loop, it does show up somehow. Like somewhere you start, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I don't want to, because when I say conscious, sometimes it is, if you are in grief or burnout, that, that time spent doing something, in that is not, heavy, deep and real thinking, that you can kind of just regulate your nervous system a little bit by saying, like, I'm going to choose this. I think the challenge comes is when it's not by choice, and that all of a sudden you haven't been connecting with friends or family or yourself, and you're like, oh, I don't even know what's happening except for the however many people I follow and whatever content's coming at me in 1 and 2 and 3 minute increments. So I don't want someone to hear this and go like, well, they're saying never to be on my phone. No, like, I think that is absolutely okay. Just like taking a nap is okay, going for a walk is okay. Sometimes you need, and there's a, in grief, there's sometimes where it's like you're in active grief and then you just oscillate, and then you are in more of the day-to-day life, and it might be binge watching some Netflix shows because that's what you need. But I think it's the awareness of when and how you're using these tools.
Yeah, the awareness is an important point. That's key. And I want to get into that a little bit, because on the show I've had quite a few people that have had crippling anxiety,
Mm,
have faced some trauma or panic attacks that led to, maybe, I guess, panic
mm,
attacks, I should say, and PTSD. And without the awareness that they had experienced some kind of trauma that could lead to that. So in other words,
right.
all of a sudden they were having panic attacks and trying to figure out, why am I so anxious, or why am I having panic attacks? And it took a while to get back into, oh, well, let me become aware of what actually happened, that the experience I faced and how it got me to this point. So what I'm curious about is that, is it that we block that off? Like, does our mind say that was too traumatic?
Mm,
I don't want to deal with that. And I don't want to go through that grieving process, if you will. And so all of a sudden we hold on to it and it shows up as anxiety or panic attacks. And is there a way to almost nip it in the bud before
Mm.
it becomes a full-blown crippling anxiety or a panic attack.
Yes. So there's a lot of layers with that. So yes, our bodies will give protective measures, especially with trauma, PTSD. And so it's like we can't deal with that right now. Sometimes if if it's happened when you were a child, the way to kind of meet that would be to start saying, okay, thank you for protecting me, and we are a grown up, and probably working with someone through that. But like, kind of shifting and going like, okay, in this moment, I am safe. But to try and nip it in the bud, I'll just share candidly. I had my first ever panic attack, like real, like where I'm in the middle of the night going like, is this a heart attack? Googling Dr. Google, is this a heart attack? And then it was a panic attack. And I had like anxiety and dealt with depression, but never that like overwhelming holy buckets, like this is scary. And so for anyone who is navigating that, my heart goes out to you immediately. And in that moment, if you are experiencing this in the moment, I am, for those listening, I'm putting my hands to heart center, because that will release oxytocin, which is kind of that self-soothing cuddle, hormone, like you're safe. And so putting your hands to your heart center can immediately start bringing in that sense of like safety, looking around and saying like, okay, I'm safe in this moment, even if there's lots going on, right? My husband had a very serious accident. He's fine now. But I remember just, when I was talking to the nurse or the social worker, whatever I was talking to, I put my hands on because I wasn't in town, on my friend's granite countertop, and just felt the coolness and took some breaths and just was like, okay, he is where he needs to be getting the care he wants. No, I wasn't like, woohoo, he had an accident and he's getting care. But it was in that moment, okay, I'm safe. He's as safe as he can be, because he's getting the attention that he can get after his accident. And so there's all these different things that we can do in the moment to actually say, okay, I'm safe in this moment. And then once you kind of find that grounding and steadiness in this moment, then you can start working through things. Then you can, maybe go, it opens up so that you can have a response where it's like, oh, maybe I need to talk to someone about this, or maybe a call to my best friend, or maybe I need a massage. So it's in that moment of like actually, saying like, okay, I'm here, I'm safe. What's next? Because what's happening with anxiety is we're far, far in the future, and we have these amazing brains where we can plan and we can think ahead, but that can often lead to anxiety because uncertainty and, the what ifs and the, what do you think is going to happen? And, is the shoe's going to drop? And then when we're thinking about the past, that can lead sometimes to depression and PTSD and trauma reliving, because you're like, oh, that happened and I never, quote unquote, dealt with it. But you might not have had the skills or the tools. And maybe now is the time at, whatever age and stage you are, that maybe you have access to resources, or, we have podcasts like this. We have so many. We were just talking about weapons of mass distraction, but they're also a gift in resources in connecting people to support that they normally wouldn't have had as well.
Well, it's shining a light on it too, because
Yeah.
I remember having panic attacks first when my parents got divorced, and I could not drive on the freeway. I mean, I'd be like, oh, there's too many cars. Somebody's going to hit me. I don't know. It was just claustrophobic. That's what it felt like.
Yes.
And I didn't realize it at the time. It was like, oh, what's going on? I'm going crazy. You kind of think all these things, what's going on? And then you have to kind of breathe. For me, it was breathing. It was like, I've just got to get my breath centered, or I'm never going to make it up this freeway, and it was real. It was like trying to figure that out. I'm like, how am I going to get from the fast lane all the way over if I have to get off? And it was like, there's no way, there's too much traffic. So you're just going to have to breathe. And I relied a lot on my faith at the time to get through some of that. But also, I don't feel, mostly because there wasn't this internet, there wasn't podcasts like this where that people talked about it. So I didn't know it was that common, and I didn't know anxiety or, it was a trauma. Obviously it was traumatic. parents get divorced. And so part of it was that. And then, later on in life, I had another one, a couple of them when I was pregnant, actually, with my child. And I think part of it was this overwhelming sense of responsibility, but it was learning how to talk myself through that. And at that point, then I had someone I could talk to and say, okay, wait, I got to figure this out. But I love that you brought up that even the simple tool of just putting your hands to your heart, because I did learn that it was like, oh my gosh, and taking some deep cleansing breaths actually just completely, it calms your nervous system, right? It kind of calms you down.
And for anyone who might feel like that, is a hokey thing to do, because, some people are like, that is cheesy. Research shows that it does release oxytocin, and you can look up oxytocin, but it's something that, helps our system feel warm and safe. And then you're talking about the deep cleansing breaths, breathing in through the nose and like expanding your belly and exhaling through your mouth. Even doing that 4 or 5 times, that tells your vagus nerve, which runs from the base of your skull all the way down to your belly. It's like the biggest nerve bundle. It tells your nervous system that you're safe in that moment. So it's actually doing what, your body needs to do to regulate it. It's giving those signals by taking breaths, because you don't take deep breaths if you're anxious. You don't take deep breaths if you're running from something. And if you think about, there's a book called Why Zebras Don't Have Ulcers. Do you know this book?
I do.
And so that's talking about when, if a zebra gets away from a predator and they do a full body shake, and then they start grazing, because they can't, do the rest and digest if they are running and fleeing and in that heightened state. And so when we, as in our bodies, are in that heightened state, we might not physically be running from danger, but we have a lot of danger in our own minds that can trigger very real physical experiences. And so starting with the physical, a deep breath, looking around the room, saying, okay, I'm safe in this moment, hands to heart center. So anything to bring you to the present moment will then start allowing that ability to, assess and get, aware of what's going on.
Yeah, aware of what's going on. For me, part of it was being pregnant and having kids at home, being pregnant, and then sitting in on an airplane and going, oh my gosh, and then the worry, like you said earlier, then you worry about all these what ifs and you got to get your mind away from that. And so it was those one, and I'd heard about the cleansing breaths actually with a Carol Burnett interview from years ago when she was talking about being so stressed about work and some other things in her life. And she learned how to do those breathing exercises. And so I started learning that. And then I would look around the plane, and first of all, I couldn't look at the door because I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's so small. How am I going to get up there? But at the same time, I would look around and look for somebody that maybe needed help, like a mom that had a baby on the plane or something that took the focus. Because for me, like when you're in the moment, all you can think about is that thing. And you're like, oh, I don't want to think about this. Right. But it's right there and you can't stop. It's a catch-22. You can't get away from it. And so what do you do to get your mind away from that? So it was the breathing that helped. And I didn't know in those days, right, about this. I learned that a little bit later, but looking outside of myself, because we're so focused, right, on ourselves and what's going on that we aren't, you can look like, how can I help somebody else? Just to get away from that.
Which brings you in the present moment. Because they are in the present moment. That help being offered is in the present moment. That's super wise, like as an instinct to say, okay, who else around me? And it also shows too, especially if people are struggling with depression or other, stress-induced things, sometimes volunteering is exactly that, because it's getting you outside of yourself. It's getting you outside of your own, worries and the habit loops that you might be in about, like, okay, thinking about this and this, but looking in the present moment for who might need a hand. Brilliant. And we could do that. And wouldn't that just even make the world a better place? Just in general, it'll help you with your anxiety. And I think it just ripples out into this lovely gift for humanity. Yeah.
I mean, I would like to say that I was doing it because I was thinking, oh, get outside yourself and look at how you can help people, but at the same time, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, people are going to look at me and think I'm absolutely crazy. She's sweating. She's like, no, what's going on here? I'm like, oh, get away from myself. But it did work. I will say
Yes.
that it absolutely
Your
did work.
instincts, yeah, whether you knew what was happening, your instincts to say, how can I support someone else, is just so key, and it gets you to the present moment. And the present moment is always where we will be able to find possibility.
Oh, I love that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
The present moment is where we will be able to find possibility. Okay,
Yeah.
expand on that a little bit.
Well, when we are, again, we have these brains that can plan. That's beautiful. We can reminisce. That's beautiful. Not discounting that. But in the moment, if we are actually present, then we can go like, oh, I'm tired. I'm hungry. I need a glass of water. And so then from there, maybe it's like, okay, it's not as big, or you pause and you are like, okay, I've been worried about this. I come back to the present moment, and there's something about that where it opens up like, oh, well, maybe I should call this person, or maybe, so something, the mind, when it's activated, and when you've had panic attacks, and I've had, so your mind is not necessarily a calm field of possibility. No, it's like a worry machine, and it's going to just keep looping and looping. And so when you can actually pause, then it's like the possibilities are then going to emerge, and whatever that might be. Maybe it's like, I need to go back to bed. Or, for me, it was, well, I was doing Dr. Google and, trying to see if it was a heart attack. Not that I recommend that either. But what it
Oh,
led
no,
me
that'll
to,
scare you.
it
Then you'll
can,
start finding all these other things that could be
oh, I
going on with
know.
you.
It's not a tumor. Anyways, but but then it was like, oh, I need to get a hold of someone. So then I was able to go on to my medical provider and say, like, who can I connect with, to get some immediate support. And I was able to set an appointment, but it wasn't until I was back to the present moment and going like, okay, that was scary. Did not like that. What can I do now? Okay, I can call my healthcare provider and say, I had this experience and I would like some support. So
I think it's fascinating just how much the mind and body are connected,
oh, right.
and how these thoughts or experiences from the past can affect us years later, absolutely years later. And so why do you think it is? Because I know plenty of people that have gone through maybe experiences like I have, with a divorce or something, an alcoholic family or something like that. And yet it doesn't seem like they have ever had an anxious moment, or they've never experienced panic attacks. Like, why is it some people get those and some don't?
Whew. That's a big one. On my first thought is that when we are feeling safe, sometimes that's when our body will release and allow us to feel the crappiest, right? Because there's something, like the zebra in the field shaking it off. There's something in like, okay, I'm an adult. I have support systems. I have structures. I have tools in my toolkit, that then it's like, oh, it's safe to kind of dabble with these. And for people who don't seem impacted, yeah, I'm there's several people coming to mind right now that I'm like, I know your childhood.
Why haven't you had these issues?
Like, and so it could be, not thinking too deeply about it, or maybe there's, something going on where they have found a way to navigate it, or they might not have just thought of it, or it might be something that they've shoved down so far that they don't even know that that's what had happened, and they have a story about how their childhood or upbringing was. And so, that's, in those cases, I'm like, well, I guess this is not your time to navigate that or deal it. Because I do believe, I mean, well, my philosophy for me is I need to go through it to, to heal it, so
Yeah.
there's no way around it. There's no way under it, the bear, but it's like, okay, we need to go through it. And for me, that's scary, and not everyone wants to do that. And so, they'll focus on, a tidy lawn, or, the perfect outfit, and, and whatever is helping them navigate their life. But that's not for me to say like my way is better, right? I
Right.
think we're all trying to do the best that we can with what we have.
Mm. It's interesting. I think maybe it depends on the emotional energy it holds for you too at the time.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I think maybe it also comes out different. Well, and I'm thinking about different masterminds I've been in and that are more business oriented, but people would talk about things in their life, like maybe they were blocking their success, right? Or they
Mm.
couldn't get to the next level. And when you're talking just now about knowing people that, oh, I know what's in your past, but then you take on other things, like you said, the perfect outfit, or being the perfect person, or having a tidy lawn, and it's like some other areas it comes out, but maybe something else is lacking. And
Mhm.
when you were saying that, I was thinking about this mastermind where this one woman was talking about she has this great business. However, even though she's got help, she's doing everything herself because she's so used to doing everything herself.
Yeah.
And it went bad. They took her through a process, and it went back to being praised
Mm.
for being the one that did so much, even though she was killing herself in the process because she was so exhausted. She was killing her relationships that were important to her. So I think if you kind of try drawing it out, yeah, I think at some point, maybe in this lifetime, but I think at some point, you're right. I think you have to deal, or you will come up in some way, somehow, and you have to deal with it, even though it's
Mhm.
uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah, so uncomfortable. Like, no one knows. I don't know anyone who's had a panic attack or dealt with some, kind of either, shifting generational patterns and breaking those cycles. I don't know that anyone's been like, oh, what a walk in the park this is. This is why we have tools. This is why we have community. And I am thankful for, the stigma being lowered, to, that the access points. There's, a lot of online resources that people can get help with. There's, ways that, even if you were never able to before, that you can connect and get support, or even go, I didn't know that that's what was happening, right? Like
Mm.
there's so many things that I'll watch a reel or a TikTok, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I relate to that so much. I didn't know that that was a thing, which then makes you feel less alone. And then that also gives possibility of like how to navigate some of these things.
Yeah. Mindfulness is mindfulness, part of that self-awareness, so important, so key to
Mm.
understanding, okay, what's going on? Where am
Yeah.
I now? What maybe do I need to look at or change? But I think mindfulness has become such a buzzword
Yeah.
nowadays that is it something that you feel people have just kind of said, whatever, it's too woo for me, or it doesn't really work? Or have you found it to be maybe very effective for people, for organizations, in helping them really find balance?
I definitely think that it is helpful, and there is a lot of research. It's relatively newly researched in the last, I'd say, 70 years. So it's a new area of research, and research does show that it is very effective and impactful. However, what doesn't get talked about is like the downside, because sometimes, well, first of all, let me start with a definition that I like, just so that everyone knows, like when we're saying mindfulness. So the definition I like comes from John Kabat-Zinn, and it is paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So paying attention on purpose, you're actually choosing. And then in the present moment, that's why people use their breath, they use their body. They might be talking about, sounds, or I had said a couple times, look around the room, using that sense of sight. present moment, bringing yourself to the present, helping someone in the present moment. And then non-judgmentally, that's like a really tough one, that gets to be real sticky for people because, especially, when people, so yes, mindfulness is a buzzword. I feel like it has been used kind of as this global, like, if you're mindful this, mindful that. And I weave it into everything that I do because it is so supportive. And I think that anyone who just says, let's wave the magic wand, and if you're mindful, your life is perfect, that's not going to happen. And so I think people get turned off by that because they're hearing, oh, mindful. That's either not for me because it's woo, or it is not for me because I can't clear my mind, which is, again, that's, kind of false advertising. And you might even have been in a yoga class or somewhere where someone's like, okay, we're going into savasana or shavasana and it, clear your mind. And then immediately it's like, well, my mind's not clear. So I'm doing it wrong, judging. And then it's like, well, I can't do this. This isn't for me. Or in a meditation prompt, the brain is doing what the brain is doing. Like it's this gift it's this gift that we have. And it's only doing what it's meant to do. It's like thinking, planning, judging, assessing, then you can habit loop. What mindfulness does by paying attention, you can start to identify and say, oh, it's a habit of mine to worry about something. Oh, interesting. And then I get to that thing and then I was fine. Okay, so maybe I can start shifting that a little bit. So it's paying attention to those things. But then the non-judgmentally piece is important because it's like, don't go, I shouldn't be thinking that. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be. It's like, no, this is just what's happening. Your mind is taking you here. Your shoulders are up around your ears. Okay, so just paying attention. Okay, can I drop my shoulders a little bit? Can I take a breath? Can I feel like I'm in the present moment? And then your mind will be off and running. So it's not about how clear your mind can be, but how many times you can come back to the present moment. So if you're doing a meditation or mindfulness practice, it's not about clearing your mind, it's about coming back. And they use, again, the body, sounds, your breath, because it's all that, everything is in the present moment. So it's just about inviting your attention back again and again and again and again. And then the byproduct can be more spaciousness, a little bit quieter in the mind. You might have a quicker access to like awareness of like, oop, I'm doing that thing again, or oop, I'm judging myself again. Interesting. Okay, can I offer compassion instead? So it gets shorter the more you practice it. Those lag times of like stress.
Well, like anything, practice, right? Practice. But I love that you brought up the judgment too, the non-judgmental, because it's not really judging other people. It can be, but it's more judging our own selves. Because I've many times sat down and said, okay, I'm going to relax now and I'm going to meditate, which does not work for me the way, traditionally. There's certain things like I love to have soothing music on because it just helps me to, you're right, not quiet the mind, because it's hard to do that. Instead, what happens is the to-do list, right? Did I pay that? Did I go pick up those? Did I get the dog food? Oh, I forgot to get, all those little, and you're like, stop, I'm meditating now. Calm down. I don't have time for you. And yet, all of that stuff runs through your mind. And so and then we do judge. I think it's kind of like, why can't I do this? And I have found I like to just go out in nature. Like I'll just go for a hike. I'll go trail running or something, because then physically I'm doing something. So I can't think so much. I have to think about where I'm at, but that's kind of like trying to be present. But I like that you say you kind of just keep coming back, inviting yourself back and paying attention to the sound. It's the sound, like the sound of your breath, to just calm down.
Yes. And I think, Kim, you are bringing up such an important point, because not every attention focusing practice or mindful practice is sitting in a lotus position or crisscross applesauce and, at the top of a mountain or by the ocean or something like that. It is often like, in real life, can I bring my attention to the present moment by being in nature? By, going and touching a tree if you have access to trees, or putting your feet in the grass. Like those are things, because it's bringing you to the present moment. It's telling your body you are safe. And I think if anyone's dealing with PTSD or anxiety, any of those things, it's, can you find a moment of, I am safe in this moment right now? And that doesn't take away the pain, the challenges, anything. That doesn't dismiss it. But in this moment, can you say, I am safe? And so if that's being in nature, if that's moving your body, expressive meditation, something we don't talk about a lot, it's the oldest form of meditation, and that's like whirling dervishes and dancing. So there's evidence that if you turn on some music and you just shake it off, like, Miss Swift says, like, just like shake for 8 to 9 minutes. So that's about 2 songs, and it can feel like a weirdly long amount of time, but just shaking, like shaking your arms, shaking your feet, shaking your head, or running. But that too is bringing you into your body. And I want people to understand that, when we hear meditation and mindfulness, it doesn't have to look a certain way. You can walk, you can sit, you can lay down if you're doing a practice, but it's going back to that definition, paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. You could wash your dishes, and that could be a meditation practice right there, like an informal meditation where you're paying attention to the fact that you have water in your home. Not everyone has that, and we have hot and warm, and we have bubbles, and we had dishes, we had resources to bring food in to put on the dishes. So for me, when I do a practice like that, like gratitude kind of like normally builds on that, like the people who made the food, or however it got to my table. And so you can get real into the weeds and kind of in a fun way, like the truck drivers and the store clerks, and
I can make washing dishes enjoyable.
Yes, and it can bring up a natural sense of like gratitude in that moment. And gratitude's another buzzword. So, there's gratitude journals, there's this, and there is research that shows that gratitude can help improve, mood, and shift shift your perspective and all of that. Because as Rick Hansen says, our minds are Teflon for good and Velcro for bad. So we're trying to, how can we start focusing and looking for the glimmers, as people are saying now, or the good things in our lives? But it is, it's not just a rote list of like, okay, today I'm happy that I have this, because people start to see it feels like a chore. Mm-hmm. What really helps with gratitude is that embodied sense that I was talking about. Like, can it emerge naturally, right? So you're going for a trail run. You might, if you're doing this on purpose in the present moment, it might be like, wow, my body is capable of this. Wow, I live in an area where I can safely do this. Oh my gosh, look at that tree. And then that's gratitude. That's the gratitude that's going to shift your perspective, not just like, can I list 5 things that made me happy? That could be a good inroad and start for people to start looking for that. But that's another word of mine that I get a little like, people just say, oh, just, feel gratitude. And it's like, well, that can make people feel really crappy, because they might say, I don't have anything to be grateful for. And, you're a ding dong for trying to suggest it. And so like, I want people to feel like there's access points and inroads wherever they are, in whatever stage they are. Some people might not have a safe area to run or to walk, but can they have a moment where, they can appreciate running water? If, it's like there's little different things in our lives that, with awareness and acceptance, right? So you might be like, this is a circumstance I don't like, but without awareness, and then without accepting, like, this is the way it is right now, without judgment, right? Because then it's like, because we might be like, well, if I wouldn't have made these 5 decisions, then I wouldn't be, because the job that I got laid off from that led me down this whole path, I cried every day, Kim. Like I cried, like literally cried every day at lunch. I was so miserable. And I could have, and it was at that time very hard to get out of my own way with the tears, with the, because I was like, I shouldn't have left. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done this. That didn't give me any possibility. And so I want people to say like, okay, if you are in a situation, if you cannot add to your own suffering by judging, but saying like, God, this is the way it is. And then that's that self-compassion piece of like, this is hard. And then you can have space to maybe make some shifts.
Well, and that self-compassion piece that you just mentioned, that yeah, go ahead and acknowledge that this is hard. It sucks.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it really sucks. And I made a mistake and whatever happened,
Mhm.
or this, happened, instead of getting into victim mind and knowing that, oh, and it's a hard lesson. One of the things that I've finally learned is to just go, there's always a silver lining. Because if I look back at things and go, oh, I can't believe that happened. Why this happened? But then you look, like you just said, it leads you somewhere else, and that door is open if you can acknowledge, if you can have that compassion, and if you can say, okay, it happened. So what's next? What's next? But I mean, I have done that kicking and screaming like you, and crying a little bit and going, okay, but you have to get that out. I mean, you really do have to get that out, and it's okay. I think that's the thing too. It's okay to just say, all right, this sucks right now, but what might be better? And that's I think where we can start to find some of that gratitude, because you're right. I think it's so easy to just go, okay, make a list of 5 things, and at the end of the day you go, okay, I'm so thankful for, and sometimes it just seems like you're just going through the motions, and I'm writing it down, but I don't really believe this.
Right.
And I think what you said, like, if you can just find like one thing and just go, wow, I have hot water. I can just turn on the faucet and I have hot water. Not everybody has that. I mean, you appreciate that, like when you're in the woods camping and you're like, hello, but not everybody has that. And so it's being able to find that and weave that into everyday existence.
Yeah.
I love this conversation.
And I do too. And I do think that for me, every time I've gone camping and then come home, I was like, that's why you go camping. So you appreciate your home. And then, people are like, or to be in nature. And that's, I'm like, well, that was good too. But look I have this bed that I love, and how lucky am I? And people, and I do want to say, like, I've talked about some work things, and people who are, deeply grieving, they might hear us say like, oh, there's a silver lining, or there's something better. And I do believe that something will emerge, right? But I want to make sure that, if someone out there is listening and dealing with some, like grief, and they don't see their way out, like, start with self-compassion, and maybe gratitude will come later, and not gratitude that the loss happened, but gratitude of maybe the path it took you down, or the help that you could offer to others. Because I do find that that can be real tricky for people to be like, well, my kid died, and what am I supposed to do? I'm not happy about it. And it's like, no, of course you're not happy about it. And maybe with this loss, you might down the line be able to help another person, or, find some sort of support that you can be outside of yourself doing that. So I think that's important too.
But you have to go through the grieving process.
Yes,
I think that's
really
the thing.
do.
You have to realize that there is going to be a period of time where you are going to go through that grieving process, and that's okay.
And society so often tells us it's not.
Oh, yeah, it's a good point.
Like, I mean, and so, but I think that's right. Like, being skillful, Kim, and like saying like, this happened even in this day. I had someone who shared with me, after someone important in her life died, she heard a song in the grocery store, and she's like, I just broke down. And she was like, I just cried. And then I finished my shopping and I was crying. And I think that to me, that piece of like acknowledging what's happening and going like, I am grieving, and like, I'm going to, maybe burst into tears and at any moment, it's okay. Even if society tells us it's not.
Well, you watch a child, a little kid, and it's like when they're tired, they just fall down, right? I'm going to go say, or when they're upset, they cry, or when something doesn't go their way, they take action on it, right? And then I'm hungry, I want this, I want that, and it's obviously you get skills and social skills as you start to grow, but it is allowing yourself to go back and feel those feelings. That I think so often we just say, I'm an adult now.
Yes.
And you bury those.
shove it down. And I love that. Okay, like I love that so much because this idea of like, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm this. And even though we might have social skills where we're not going to collapse at a cocktail party and just feel like I'm tired, well, we should bring the fainting couch back, anyways. But the idea of like, but we don't even know for ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's where, kind of full circle back to awareness, back to allowing, back to compassion, and going and like checking in, like I might be hungry, I might be tired, and I might need a break, or I might need to get out of the house, and you can then make those skillful choices and support yourself by coming back to that awareness where we have needs. Like, we didn't just grow up and grow out of our needs. We might have different ways to manage them, but how many people do you know that have no idea what their needs are? They have no idea anything because they're on that automatic pilot.
Yeah.
And I think coming back to that childlike and going like, we would never look at a kid and go like, oh, calm down. Like you'll eat. Well, maybe what, I don't know. I didn't have kids. So
You'll eat when we say.
yeah, exactly. You'll eat what's in front of you. But yes, you have social skills, but what would it be like to reconnect with the innocence of our own needs and as like you would a child, like in care? And you might not have to make it anyone else's issue, but you could, maybe do some kindness to yourself and, give yourself a wubby and a nap and
Where's my blankie?
blanket. Yeah.
I know. Where's I
know.
got you. I'm like, where's my blankie?
Yeah.
I need my teddy bear. No,
yes.
but it is true because we all have those moments where we just say, "Oh, just it's being kind to yourself."
Yes.
Real quickly before we go, I would love to know if for people because I know people that just label themselves as saying, I'm just an anxious person. I'm just an anxious person. And so that's why I do X, Y, and Z or whatever. But there is a way to recognize if you have a lot of anxiety or anxious thoughts? And then is it just a matter of going, okay, I've got to calm down here, hands to heart? Or is there something that you would say can help people or what you would offer to people that maybe consider themselves a highly anxious person?
Well, first, I'd want to know if that's working for them, because if someone has identified themselves as highly anxious and they're not seeing any downside to it, we might, as judging or looking in and going like, well, that's a really hard way to do life. You don't have to have it that hard. But if they are anxious and they're saying like, I want a way out of this, I want to break this cycle, I would say first start noticing the body, because if you just check in with your body and you're like, oh, my stomach's in knots, my brow is furrowed, my heart's beating really rapidly, you can be like, oh, I'm noticing this. I'm noticing, right? So it's the awareness piece, like what is actually happening in my body. Then you might notice the habit patterns, like what triggers it? Like, is it, a monthly bill that you're getting that you don't know how to pay? Or is it, something job uncertainty or world uncertainty? And then it's coming back to those like, well, where is your circle of control? Like, what can you control in this moment? I can't control the world around me. I can't control this, but you're coming back to what can I control? And usually that is your attitude, it's your, and I'm not saying like flip a switch and be like, oh, fa la la, everything's fine. It can be like, wow, this is a really scary situation I'm in, mortgage, bills, whatever. And what can I do in this moment? Okay, maybe I can do in this moment is take a breath. And in that breath, maybe I'll be like, oh, I could listen to something, or I could go for a walk, or I could do something that is going to actually help regulate me so I can meet the stress. Because again, meditation, mindfulness, may or may not be the supportive answer, but it is an access point to awareness. And with awareness, you have choice. And, and then you can choose something different. So how do you meet these situations with curiosity and maybe kindness for yourself and a little curiosity and compassion? Yeah. Simple, not easy.
Yeah, it sounds simple. You're right. And it isn't always easy because we have a learned behavior of not doing that. And so now it's being able to go back and saying, wait a minute, taking care of our own selves, which, I think nowadays more and more people are aware of that, fortunately. Yeah. And it is something that's becoming more common. But yes, choice, having the ability to be able to have freedom of choice is absolutely so powerful. Dr. Theresa Skaar, thank you so much for being here, or AKA Dr. T. As you are known. Yeah. We have all the links that you have given me. So we have a way for people to reach out to you and get in touch with you so they can learn a little bit more about what you do and maybe work with you.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, if people follow me or even get on my newsletter, I often do free masterclasses on, mindfulness in everyday life. And so, and generally on Zoom. So, watch for those. I kind of intermittently, I'll be like, oh yeah, like it's been a while. And I like to offer those. And then I also do one-on-one coaching workshops and speaking, but I loved this conversation so much. Thank you for having me on again. This was fun.
Thanks for being back here. I'm glad we were able to make this work and you were able to get back here after your fantastic retreat that you just went on.
Yes.
So perfect timing. You're all relaxed and ready to get back into it.
Exactly. Yes. Nervous system is definitely settled. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll link all that information down below. Thanks so much for tuning in today. If you like what you hear, please consider leaving a rating and hit that subscribe button. And if you know someone who would benefit from this episode, please share it with them. I'll be back again next week with another episode of Shift or Get Off the Pot.